Imagine spending $5 billion, more money than the GDP of many countries, on a single military project, only to have it collapse in spectacular failure. Imagine years of development, thousands of engineers working around the clock, cutting-edge technology that was supposed to revolutionize naval warfare, all wasted. This is the story of one of the most catastrophic military spending disasters in modern history. A submarine project so expensive, so ambitious, and so ultimately doomed that it became a cautionary tale for governments worldwide. Welcome to the untold story of the Virginia-class submarine program's most infamous chapter. To understand this disaster, we need to travel back to the 1980s. The Cold War was still raging. The Soviet Union was building submarines faster than ever before, massive nuclear-powered vessels equipped with increasingly advanced weaponry. The United States Navy felt the pressure mounting. They needed a new generation of submarines, vessels that could outpace, outmaneuver, and outfight anything the Soviets could produce. Enter the Seawolf-class submarine project. This was not just another weapons system upgrade. This was supposed to be the ultimate hunter-killer submarine, a technological marvel that would give America absolute dominance beneath the waves for decades to come. The Seawolf was designed to be faster than the Typhoon, more maneuverable than any Soviet vessel, equipped with advanced sonar systems that could detect enemy submarines from impossible distances, and armed with weapon systems that had not even been fully developed yet. The project began in the 1980s with optimistic projections. Military planners estimated the cost at around $2 billion per submarine. Reasonable, they thought, for such advanced technology. Congress approved the project. Defense contractors mobilized. Thousands of workers were hired. Research facilities across the United States began work on what they believed would be the next generation of American naval supremacy. But something went terribly wrong. The Seawolf-class submarine was revolutionary, perhaps too revolutionary. Unlike previous submarines, which evolved gradually from existing designs, the Seawolf represented a complete reimagining of submarine architecture. Every system was new. Every component was cutting edge. Nothing was proven in actual operational conditions. The submarine's hull was designed using new titanium alloys that had never been tested in operational deep-sea environments. The reactor was more powerful than anything in existence, requiring entirely new safety protocols and cooling systems that had to be invented from scratch. The sonar suite was so advanced, it required entirely new computer systems, so complex that programming them became a project within the project. The design phase, which was supposed to take 3 years, stretched into 5 years, then 6 years, then 7 years. With each passing year, costs spiraled upward. Design flaws were discovered, requiring expensive redesigns. New technologies became available, and the military demanded they be incorporated into the vessel. The original budget of $2 billion per submarine ballooned to $3 billion, then $4 billion, then $5 billion. Engineers were working with bleeding-edge technology that simply did not exist yet. They were trying to integrate systems that had never been tested together. They were pushing the boundaries of physics, material science, and naval engineering simultaneously. It was a recipe for disaster, and nobody in management seemed willing to pump the brakes. By the early 1990s, the first Seawolf-class submarine was finally completed. USS Seawolf was christened on July 24, 1991, a decade after the project's inception. It was, by all accounts, an impressive vessel. It was longer than 350 meters, longer than 3 football fields placed end to end. It displaced nearly 9,000 tons when submerged. It had a revolutionary spherical sonar array mounted in the bow. It had 30 torpedo tubes capable of launching advanced missiles and weapons systems. It was, on paper, the most capable attack submarine ever built. The cost? Over $2.4 billion for just the first vessel. When you account for research and development, the true cost per submarine was estimated at closer to $5 billion. more than double the original estimate, but the problems did not stop with completion. When USS Seawolf began sea trials, engineers discovered serious issues. The reactor, which was supposed to be the most advanced in the world, had cooling system problems. The sonar, which cost nearly $250 million to develop, malfunctioned repeatedly. The hull, made from those new titanium alloys, had unexpected structural issues that required constant repairs. Then came the political bombshell that would doom the entire project. The Cold War ended. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. By 1991, the Soviet Union itself had collapsed. Suddenly, the entire rationale for building a new generation of advanced attack submarines vanished. There was no more Soviet threat. There were no more Soviet submarines being constructed at a frantic pace. The enemy that had justified the Seawolf's enormous expense simply ceased to exist. Congress began asking difficult questions. Why were we spending $5 billion per submarine when there was no Cold War? Why did we need a dozen of these vessels when the primary threat had disappeared? Military planners scrambled to provide justifications. They pointed to regional conflicts. They emphasized the importance of maintaining technological superiority. They warned about future threats, but the American public wasn't buying it. Polls showed overwhelming opposition to continued spending on exotic weapons systems while the country faced serious domestic problems, crumbling infrastructure, underfunded schools, a struggling economy. The political will to continue the Seawolf program simply evaporated. In 1997, Congress made a shocking decision. Only 3 Seawolf-class submarines would be built, instead of the originally planned 20. The program that was supposed to give America a new generation of submarines was cut short. The remaining funds were redirected to a new, less expensive Virginia-class design that could be built for roughly $2 billion per submarine. Still expensive, but a fraction of the Seawolf's cost. The 3 Seawolf-class submarines that were completed, USS Seawolf, USS Connecticut, and USS Jimmy Carter, cost a combined total of nearly $10 billion. That is over $3.3 billion per submarine, making them the most expensive submarines ever built by any nation in history. For those billions of dollars, what did America get? 3 submarines that had serious technical problems that required constant fixing. 3 submarines that were so expensive to operate, they spent most of their time in dry dock for maintenance rather than out at sea performing their mission. 3 submarines with capabilities that were, frankly, overkill for the post-Cold War security environment. The engineering community was devastated. The naval yards where the submarines were built, including the famous Newport News shipbuilding, laid off thousands of workers when the project was canceled. Entire departments dedicated to submarine development were shut down. Decades of accumulated expertise simply evaporated as experienced engineers left the industry. The defense contractors involved, General Dynamics and Newport News, absorbed massive losses. Shareholders were furious. Stock prices dropped. The companies had to write off billions in losses. Careers were ruined. Engineers and managers who had dedicated their professional lives to the Seawolf project watched their life's work become a symbol of government waste. Perhaps most damning was the simple fact that the 3 Seawolf-class submarines turned out to be unnecessary. The threat they were designed to counter did not exist. The Virginia-class submarines that followed were cheaper, more flexible, and in many ways more suited to the actual post-Cold War security environment. Today, the 3 Seawolf-class submarines continue to serve in the United States Navy, but they are underutilized. They are too expensive to operate in high numbers. They are too specialized for most of the missions the Navy actually performs. They are, in essence, answers to a question that nobody is asking anymore. The Seawolf project became synonymous with government waste. It was cited in congressional hearings about defense spending for decades afterward. Military analysts point to it as a cautionary tale. What happens when you build military hardware based on worst-case scenarios and unlimited budgets without checking to see if the threat still exists? The most tragic aspect of this story is that it was entirely preventable. If Congress had simply paused the program in 1989, when the Cold War ended, and reassessed whether the Seawolf was still necessary, they could have saved $7 billion or more. But institutional momentum is powerful. Once a military project gets rolling, it is nearly impossible to stop, even when the strategic justification disappears overnight. Military bureaucracies are designed to perpetuate themselves. Defense contractors have financial incentives to keep projects going, regardless of whether they are still needed. Thousands of workers have their livelihoods dependent on continuation. Politicians from districts where the work is done fight to keep funding flowing. The result is a system that often builds things nobody really needs, at prices nobody can afford. The Seawolf-class submarines stand as monuments to this reality. Monuments of titanium and steel costing more money than many nations spend on their entire budgets, built to fight an enemy that no longer exists. They are technological marvels, certainly. They are capable vessels, but they are also the most expensive mistake in submarine history. When we examine the Seawolf project, we are not just looking at a failed weapons system. We are looking at a fundamental failure of strategic planning, political oversight, and economic discipline. We are looking at what happens when brilliant engineers are given unlimited budgets and told to build something without clear objectives or realistic constraints. The Seawolf project reminds us that military spending, however necessary for national defense, must be subjected to rigorous scrutiny and realistic assessment of actual threats. It reminds us that technological capability is not the same as strategic necessity. And it reminds us that even the most advanced military hardware in the world becomes nothing more than an expensive monument to waste when the strategic reasoning behind it disappears. The 3 Seawolf-class submarines continue their patrols beneath the waves, silent and expensive reminders of ambition unchecked, of billions squandered, and of the eternal human tendency to prepare for yesterday's wars while tomorrow's challenges go unaddressed. They are perhaps the most expensive ghosts in military history, powerful vessels built for a threat that died before they were even launched.